Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock, and let me go ahead on and call the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee meeting to order. Mr. Walker said he'll be running late. Can you call the roll for attendance?
McBride. Present. Livingston.
Here?
Weaver.
Here.
Walker. Mackey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Brings to our second item on the agenda, which is approval of minutes for May 21st. To entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussions, change, deletions, reference to minutes? There being none, we can take the roll.
McBride. Yes. Livingston. Yes. Weaver.
Yes.
Walker. Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. The staff, anyone have anything to add, delete from the agenda? Staff members? No one? With that said, I intend motion for adoption of the agenda. It's been
Second.
moved, properly second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll for the motion to adopt the agenda?
McBride. Yes. Livingston.
Yes.
Weaver.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
That brings item 4, items for discussion / action. First is item 4A, review of Transportation Penny Advisory Committee, reference the TPAC recommendations. Mr. Jones,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and other members of the committee. So we just wanted to give you an update, and it's no small feat that we're here today with a complete set of principles that's in front of you. And just if I could, publicly, I want to thank Chairman John Black and other members of the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee. They have had every meeting you asked them to have. They have worked very hard and gone from basically getting a charge from you to now to the point of delivering to you on time a draft of the project principles that we'll talk about today. So just want to publicly acknowledge and thank the work of Mr. Black and his committee. And so if we can go to the next slide. This is our agenda for today. We're going to go back through the roadmap, which we'll get to. Y'all will see the agenda here in just a second. But we're going to go back through the roadmap just to kind of give you a sense of where we are. And then we're going to kind of dive deep into the work that TPAC has been doing. You may recall that it was their job to do a fair amount and make reports to this committee, which they've done, and now deliver to you a final product, which we'll go through here in just a minute. We'll give you some highlights of what's in the principles document that the TPAC committee has put together. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit through the categorized needs list, which is slightly different and expanded from what this committee has seen up to now. And then finally, we'll discuss what the June 25th work session of County Council will look like. So if we can go to the next slide. This is our friendly roadmap. Everything in gray has been done. Well, I guess we're doing our June 18th Transportation Ad Hoc Committee meeting, but there are several steps remaining in this process. But I just want you to take a look at all that has been done. As you all know, each and every box on that screen is a public meeting at which folks have been able to attend, participate, and hear the business of the county and hear the business of this penny. And you can certainly see that a number of those meetings, all of the meetings in purple, have been specially called meetings of the TPAC. So they had a number of meetings that were not part of their normal agenda to get us here today. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to summarize and go one more, sort of what's the work of the TPAC and where we've gotten to. You can go one more slide. And in particular, what I'm going to do is you're all holding what we call the principles document. We've given each of you the latest copy of it so that you can see the work product. It even reflects a few comments that came in from the TPAC as late as yesterday afternoon at its meeting. So we're going to give you some highlights of those. I do not presume that you want me to read through the entire set of principles as we stand here, but they are consistent with what this committee has seen. They've been expanded and improved. And so I'd like to highlight for you a few things. The first is consistent with this committee's recommendation and wish, as well as input from County Council, the 2012 needs have been prioritized. And let me explain what that means. The language that is set forth in the principles and the language that is proposed to govern the penny says as follows. that a guiding principle of the new penny shall be that the 2012 needs, and that's defined in this document as viable, unfunded projects that were on the 2012 penny list, that those projects will be addressed first, that they'll be prioritized in accordance with any applicable ordinance of the county. As you all know, the county already has ordinances in place for certain kinds of projects, including dirt roads. And in the absence of that sort of prioritization, the 2012 needs will be addressed in order from highest to lowest based upon the project score that is assigned in accordance with these principles. And so that, we think, is a critical and crucial item that is from direct feedback of this committee. The next call out is communities that may find themselves isolated, in particular if they have a project that is their sole ingress or egress. They have been addressed in two of the principles, the overall impact principle as well as the safety principle, to make sure that those committees are taken care of. And finally, the description of community investment projects, which the council has seen before, which is in our ordinance and also in the principles, has been modified to include the highlighted language, which makes it clear that these projects also include unfunded 2012 penny projects, and the very same that we're talking about in the principles. So if we can go one more slide, I wanted to share with you, we've had a lot of conversation about how dynamic our community is, and the fact that the list of needs that has been prepared is only as good as the situation we're in right now, and that we thought it was important, and this council gave us direction and gave TPAC direction to come up with a way to address emerging needs, meaning things that we don't know about yet. And so there's a process suggested in the principles to address emerging needs, to ensure that they're looked at least semi-annually, to ensure the same kind of process that we've gone through up to this point with the principles could be followed with the emerging needs, meaning input from TPAC and input from this committee. And to the extent emerging needs need to actually become projects, then they would be scored and run through the same rubric that the current projects would be run through. So safety being the number one item in the principles to be addressed. So emerging needs would have to follow the same sort of scoring rubric. If we go to the next slide, if we can. And again, as I said, I just gave you 4 highlights from the principles, but I invite you to read them. I think they speak a lot about this council's priority. The next thing, you all have seen a long list of needs that was compiled by Stantec under its contract with the county. They reached out, as you all know, had 11 or 12 different community meetings, reached out to lots of different stakeholders to include the municipalities, DOT, and others, and came up with a very long list of needs. Part of the work of the TPAC was to take a look at that list of needs and give some specific input. And that input falls in 2 kind of different categories. One is to make sure that the dollars assigned to some of the needs were accurate and reflective of what was to be expected down the road. So let me give you an example. So there was programmatic needs that have always been in the Stantec study. Programmatic needs meaning that they're intended to address dirt roads, other resurfacing, and sidewalks. They were categorized as programmatic needs. The original cost estimate was really based upon a 12-year look. Of course, we now have a 25-year penny. And so we received input from the TPAC about increasing the amount of dollars that went into those programmatic needs to make sure they were addressed. The other thing that we did is we have recast that needs list in accordance with the categories set by the council. So you will find as Exhibit A to your principles that these needs have now been categorized as either community investment needs or county advancement. And of course, comment enhancement needs stand on their own. So if you want to go to the next slide, I wanted to just show you the summary, and this is in your principles. But if in summary, you'll see that all of the community investment needs taken from the list prepared by Stantec with input from TPAC, that they come up to about $2.7 billion. And if you're wondering, well, how do you choose between and determine what's community investment and county advancement? I see Director Maloney here. He gave us some great feedback on the nature of projects, the size of projects, and how much traffic might be impacted in order to make a decision about what might be county advancement versus community investment. But under county advancement, you'll see that the overall cost is approximately $1.4 billion. The total cost is about $4.1 billion, and you'll note that that's slightly higher than what's in the Stantec needs list. There are two reasons for that. Number one, the additional dollars that were put in the programmatic categories that were highlighted by TPAC and its discussions. And number two, there are additional costs on top of base costs that are in every one of the projects that are contemplated by Stantec. We made sure that those additional costs were layered over every project, not just a section of project that was in that needs list. Because remember, one of the things we talked about is we know that whatever the costs are determined to be today, that they won't be that in 5 years. So we wanted to make sure that we were accounting for all potential costs. So that's where we come up with $4.1 billion. If you want to know, well, which need falls under which category, if you'll keep flipping in your principles, it's all there. I'm not planning on going through each of them, but I just want to remind you that it's a list of needs. The needs have to be scored in accordance with these principles by the Transportation Department in order for them to become actionable projects, that the 2012 needs will be taken care of first. And if along the way, over these 25 years of the new penny, there are new needs that haven't come to light yet, then y'all have made provision for those as well. If I can go to the next slide, please. One of the interesting things, I'm sorry, go back one more. I'm sorry, I'm missing that thing. One of the things you'll see is that the community investment needs, as broken down, account for about 65% of the costs of what's on the current list. County advancement, about 35%. And so now if we'll go to the next slide, one of the considerations, and we spent a lot of time talking about this yesterday, and Mr. Chair, Mr. Livingston was there and heard this discussion. But one of the things that the TPAC wanted to send along to this committee is that they very much support the principles and they support the categorized needs list, and they encourage this committee to take a closer look at how the penny is being allocated, given the fact that right now 65% of the costs seem to fall into the community investment category versus 35% for county advancement, even though, and let's go to the next slide, this is from our ordinance, and you may recall that we have 50% of the dollars right now under the ordinance allocated to county advancement and 30% of these dollars allocated to community investment, and then, as you know, 20% to the comment. And so it was encouraged that there be additional discussion about that. And so I didn't know whether, Mr. Chair, you wanted to pause there or you want us to go on and finish, and then we'll talk about whatever the committee would like to talk about. We're about 3 slides away. Okay. The other thing that was discussed a little bit in TPAC, and some questions have been asked of us, if you go to the next slide, is exactly how does this penny allocation break down on an inflation-adjusted dollars? And so we were able, with Mr. Pearl's help, to get the inflation-adjusted figure from the comment of about $1.1 billion, and ACA Thomas has looked extensively at the inflation-adjusted costs, which would be the $4.1 billion I gave you, but inflation-adjusted for over a period of years. That number, as we've found out, Ms. Thomas, could run anywhere from a fairly broad range, and we've just selected $8 billion as a reasonable number that we think this might cost. If you then look at the next column, the current penny allocation, what I mean by that is, right now, we think the penny will collect $4.5 billion. If you take the 80% portion of that penny that's now allocated to county advancement, community investment, it should generate about $3.6 billion. And about 900 for the comment. The difference is simply the difference between what we think, what we're going to have in terms of dollars versus the overall costs, right? So $4.4 billion difference. And then the funding percentage is the portion of the projects that we think will be funded with penny dollars in the various categories. So if we're talking about the comment right now, if the comment receives 20% of $4.5 billion, roughly 82% of the comment's projected need will be funded. If county advancement and community investment projects receive roughly 80% of the penny that's anticipated, or at least thought about right now, that funds roughly 45% of the identified needs. So someone had asked us for that breakdown, and we wanted to provide it to this committee. If you'll go one more slide, and now one more. I just wanted to highlight for you all what the point of the work session is on the 25th. Many of you have been at these meetings, but the full council has not seen or heard all of this. And so we wanted to bring the full council back together. We wanted to walk through a little bit about what the TPAC's charge was, how we got here, what the point of the principles are, how the principles enable us to get from needs to projects, how the program will be managed by the Transportation Department on an ongoing basis. And ultimately, we want to walk through the principles with the county council to make sure that there's not any further feedback. And so that will be the main point, and that, of course, is on the roadmap, already scheduled. And the final thing I would say to you, and I'll be quiet, Mr. Chair, and answer questions. There's a couple of, really two other critical items that are on the roadmap after June 25th. One is the public hearing that is scheduled on the penny ordinance for July 9th. Council has taken the unusual step of scheduling that public hearing, and there's no action intended to occur on the ordinance that night. The point is to get public feedback on the penny ordinance, the program, all that has been presented in the public meetings. The council has also taken, and administration has also taken, we think, a wise step in publishing that notice, not just once in the newspaper, which is required by state law, but publishing it 3 separate times to make sure the public is informed about the public hearing. And that'll both be in the hard copy of the paper and online. And that will start this Sunday, or did it start last Sunday? So it should have been in there on the 23rd. It'll be in there the next 2 Sundays. Started on the 16th, thank you. So the final thing is on July 16th, if we stick with the schedule, and remember, we do have a deadline. We have to give all of this to our election commission on or before August 15th. So we've scheduled to give ourselves 30 days worth of breathing room, and of course, you all have other things you might be doing in August. So we'd like to get this resolved in July. But on July 16th, just a reminder, the penny ordinance is presumed to be on the agenda for 3rd reading, and there will be a separate resolution that is presumed to be on the agenda to then be approved, to approve these principles, or the version of the principles that is going to be approved at that time, with further input. That's all we have, Mr. Chair. We're here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Jones, I had one question on the categorized needs list page. I don't see a page number, but under county advancement needs, it says, bless you, widening and then special. What is special? What does that define special?
Yeah,
the 64 million.
Yeah, that's a term that's an engineering term used on the Stantec list. I think it's likely a category of projects that don't have good definition, so they're special. But we can get a list of those needs if you'd like. I think it was just a couple, wasn't it? Yeah, largely new road construction.
Yeah, can we add a little more verbiage to that? Because if I'm explaining this to somebody, I'm not going to know. I'm not going to remember what special is.
Yep,
So
we can do that.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, on page 11, when we go over the penny allocations and inflation, I see the notation that says it does not include emerging needs in that $8 billion inflation adjusted total cost. But does this also include those projects that we talked about from 2012 that were unfunded?
Yes, it does.
So that's in here too?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I did want to go back to when we talk about the categorized needs list and the percentage breakdown here, and you said this percentage and categorized needs list, this is coming from TPAC, is that correct?
So the categorized needs list is really a combination primarily of the Stantec needs list that this council has seen that was finalized at the end of May, as I recall. Then with additional input from TPAC, both as to making sure that there's enough money in the categories that only had a 12-year life in them, but also then additional work between us and Stantec, making sure that all of the cost numbers picked up an additional soft cost element that was in some of Stantec's needs list, but not all of it. So the 65-35 is just a breakdown, the total cost, $4.1 billion, that is now reflected on the needs list.
And so I guess, Mr. Livingston, looking at that percentage versus the percentage that exists in the current motion.
Well, opposite from what we.
Correct. And that, I guess that's what I wanted to get at, is that it is totally opposite and, you know, I guess conversation around how we can go about changing that, I guess.
That's an important point, once we broke it, because we didn't have, this information we didn't have before we did the percentages, you see,
Yeah.
so, which means that, yes, we may have to revisit that. That was one of the
Look at that. I mean, I think it makes sense, especially how it's broken down with the community investment percentage and looking at the categories that are there. And then I think, like Councilman Weaver said, just getting follow up on what special is, but I think, you know, those make sense in the categories. So I wouldn't be opposed to changing the percentages to match how these are grouped.
based on something, and this also. Recognize him.
I'm not quite understanding, you're saying you want to flip-flop the percentages?
No, ma'am,
Not you.
I'm not
Okay.
recommending anything. I just wanted you all to see. I think the point was made.
You know, I just like to get to the,
Yes, ma'am. I
to
got
the
you.
bottom line.
The point was made that when council decided how to assign percentages, we didn't yet have the numbers we have today, and we're just highlighting them for you. Whether that influences the decision is up to you.
Okay, but I'm hearing something else coming from my colleagues, or am I not?
Yes, ma'am. I was just saying, now that I see all the projects and, you know, what's projected cost-wise from intersection, bikeways, green, like when they broke it down this way, and, you know, TPAC looked at it as well, then I could see how the percentages may need to be flipped so that we can have more in the community investment category than in the county advancement.
Okay.
I remember specifically when we were talking about the categories, I even remember asking, can we please break it down and see what's in what category before we move forward? And that's kind of how this came about, too. Yeah.
Okay, that's consistent with my thinking. With the, and I know we're not deciding on which way to go, but it makes sense. And if you look at the county investments, we do have state investing also. So I can understand us taking another look at that. Thank you.
We're gonna have a workshop. We'll need to fight it out here now about what the percentage ought to be, but at least say, you know, the committee at least could say, we think it's something we ought to make sure we consider and look at it in the workshop as opposed to trying. Yeah, Ms. Mackey recognized.
Well, I guess I want to say it publicly, I guess, because I know as we think about the public's engagement, as we prepare for a public hearing and making sure this information out here, I mean, I do want to say that looking at this list and seeing, you know, the community investment and it's saying this is estimated, you know, 65%. And right now, I guess the proposal that we have, the language, the ordinance that we have says only 30%. So that would say that, okay, looking at our needs list, we would only get to half of what's even here. And I think that would concern me. So I definitely want my, you know, residents of county to know that I definitely want to support getting as many of those projects in community investment category done as possible. So. To Chair.
Livingston.
Hi, sir. I know
Go ahead, sir.
I'm in a different spot. It's still me, though.
Mr. Brown, you recognize.
Thank you. I know you mentioned you might not want to get into a lot of details on this afternoon. The work session, as you mentioned, is scheduled for July 2nd, but if you had conversation now as an ad hoc, then when you had the work session, if you had if you took, for example, a vote from the ad hoc today, when you go to the work session and then after the work session, you have council, then you would at least have something coming from the ad hoc so that you don't have to have another meeting in between the work session and the council meeting. So that way you would actually, because at the work session, you can't take an action, right? So, but at the ad hoc, you can. So that would prevent you or allow you not to have another meeting after the work session before council gets an action from the committee. So something for you to think about. So that way you could avoid having, additional meetings if you didn't need to.
Mr. Lewis, I just want to make sure we got it correct. Mr. Brown, our work session is June 25th. You said July 2nd, so I just want to make sure.
Maybe I'm thinking about a different.
You are, and people thought we were having two, but it's
Right.
coming up on June 25th.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Next Tuesday.
Gotcha.
But I do appreciate just painting that picture because I do think it's important as well that we
Perfect.
can take some action just based on our time frame moving forward.
I apologize. Too many road maps, and I got on the wrong
We like
map.
the roadmap.
You going down the wrong road?
Wrong road, sir.
This,
I'm back.
Ms. Newton, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. And I'm not part of this committee, but I did just want to co-sign on what I've heard the committee say in terms of revisiting the categories and the amounts that have been in those categories. I've always been a proponent for including more in the community in the community investment category. And so seeing this information laid out has been really helpful. So I'm not adding anything new, but I think it's so important that I just wanted to echo everything that you're saying. And thank you guys for spending time to talk about it.
And if anyone of the committee wish to make any recommendations about anything to forward to council for discussion at our meeting,
Mr. Chairman, I'm still a little confused here, so on this formula. So are we going with the formula that's in front of us now? Or are we going, that is on the screen, or are we going with some other formula?
Good question.
well, we're trying to decide now, whatever this committee want to.
I thought we'd already decided on the formula. No?
Recognize it, sir.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept TPAC's recommendation regarding the categorized needs list and percentages for council to forward to council. And that is community investment needs 65%, county advancement needs 35%.
Mr. Chair. And just for purposes of putting that in the context of the larger penny, because it's effectively we're talking about 65% of the non-comment portion of the penny. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
65%.
I made a motion.
Like your motion recommendation is to make the percentage consistent with the needs list here.
Yes, sir.
Recognize.
First, I'll go back.
It died for lack of a second. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I think we need to answer Mr. Weaver's question. Mr. Weaver, you had your question was very good because we had made a decision before, but we have not made a decision yet in terms of what to do about. And I think Ms. Mackey was attempting to correct that so that we could make a recommendation now, and then that we would send that back to the workshop, and then we wouldn't have to worry about going back all over again and making another motion.
Okay.
So
that-
you're
That
starting to
helps
follow.
clarify it, yes, okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I'm recognized or not. Am I intruding on someone's time? Ms. Mackey, could you repeat the motion so I understand it one more time? I may second it once I hear it again.
That's why I didn't second it, Ms. Mackey.
Okay, I appreciate it. So I don't mind repeating it, but typically, you know, folks, you second a motion for discussion. And so I will repeat my motion again.
Okay.
But typically, my motion died for a lack of a second, so I'll do it one more time. Like to make a motion to approve the categorized needs list percentages from the TPAC committee to forward to council for consideration. That would be the community investment needs at 65%, the county advancement needs at 35%. And adding what Mr. Jones said, that would be based upon the remaining percentages not tied to the comment.
Okay, I will second that motion then for discussion.
Yes, just clarification. These are not the TPAC recommendations, though. This is what came out of Syntec or somebody's study. Go ahead.
I think it's fair to say that the TPAC did review this yesterday, did recommend it to this committee for consideration. So I think it is fair to say that this was reviewed and recommended by the TPAC.
And I'll second it.
So I think I'm more clear now. So it's 65% and 35% of the non-comment money.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what was throwing me off because I'm doing 65, 35 plus 20. That's over 100, the way I do math. So it's the non-comment money.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
got it.
So that would be 52% for community investment, 28% for county advancement, if the comment percentage is left where it is.
Okay.
52 plus 28 plus 20, that gets you to 100.
Mr. Chair? Okay.
Motion, all right.
Yes, pertaining to the motion. Yeah. The other, I could speak of something that was not pertaining to the motion, but I'll leave it alone. The other area, for clarification, the other area is sort of confusing now. I know we did the 65, 35 percentage. I guess I need a clarification on the motion, because will that mess up the motion with the 52%, the one that you just gave us? Do we need to add that for clarification, Mr. Chair? Because it's sort of confusing. We got two different percentages coming before us right now.
I think if the motion just simply says it, we're only referring to those two categories and not the comment, I think it'd be okay. And that's intended in the motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because we've been having a lot of different confused conversations going on, so I want to make sure that that was clear.
Mr. Chair? I'm sorry. The other reason I think the way the motion has been made makes sense is because council still hasn't made a full decision about what the comment percentage is either. So to say that 65 and 35 split of the non-comment related portion, I think gets you to a point where if the comment related portion should change, then you automatically changing the other percentages. So I just wanted to let you know, as we sit here today, if the comment stayed at 20%, I wanted you to know what 65 and 35 would mean in terms of the community investment and county advancement. But if the comment percentage ever changes, then it would also impact the other two. So in other words, the math would be different. So sorry, that was confusing.
Okay, and if the, Mr. Chair? And but the 65%, will that affect, if the comment changes, will that affect the motion that was just made?
No,
It would
ma'am.
not? I just
No,
want-
ma'am.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Okay.
I'll call the roll for the motion.
McBride,
Yes?
Livingston,
Yes.
Weaver,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Else come from the body? Any other questions, motion? Ms. Mackey, recognized.
I have just one other question. Going back to when we talked about the 2012 needs prioritized, and just and this may be in the principals document, I just haven't had a chance to read it, but in the principals document, do we define what that means, what unfunded is, what that clear, so folks understand what that means? Because I know we talked before about some projects getting done because folks on the road didn't want to get done. So that wouldn't make it to the next phase.
That's right. We used two concepts to try to catch that after talking with Mr. Maloney, and that is those that are viable and those that are unfunded. So a project is not viable if everyone on the road does not, or for a certain percentage of the folks on the road don't agree to allow it to be done, at least in the case of a dirt road.
Sorry, I had one more. We had also talked about the possibility for things to come later, for instance, when we had the unknown per se. So if we had another incident like a flood or how is that broken down? What category is that in?
So first, I think you start with emerging needs. And so there's a suggested process here to identify emerging needs and to sort of bring them into the stream. The other thing I think is important is that there's dollars allocated in each of the category buckets for emerging needs. In other words, not every dime is spent. Some are set aside for emerging needs. But the final thing I'll say to you is that if something occurs that is a weather-related event or a catastrophic event, then it gets extra points, and I'll tip my hat to Mr. Maloney, it gets extra points under the safety scoring so that it would go right to the top to get done.
That's some of the things. Any further questions? Else to come forward. Everything else.
No, sir.
But I have one more thing. Or have Mr. Jones.
Next steps,
Are we supposed to read this thing by a certain date or something?
Yeah, let's stop there.
Thank you.
So the next steps would be for us to take the action today and the principles as they exist today and have a work session and bring the rest of the county council into the conversation to make sure there's no other voice that needs to be heard and no other point that needs to be made. And then as a result of any input made there, we would then make plans to make whatever revisions need to be made to the principles. I guess there's a question as to whether or not this committee will meet sometime in July to just sort of finalize if there's any changes that come from the work session to then deal with those, and then we'd move forward then to July 16th. I get the other item I could imagine that could influence changes would be the July 9th public hearing, and we'd have time to react to that as well.
Sounds good. Anything else? Graduate.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, I just wanted to thank you and the TPAC and everybody for the work that they've done. And you know I'm very critical of work and making sure that we have the proper evaluations done and using the appropriate values and all. So I appreciate the work that has been done, and I look forward to seeing the larger report.
Else? Nothing else about transportation pending project update that we're on now, then the item is
No.
Motion to adjourn?
I'm sorry.
Second.
I'm sorry, we do have one more item. We have item 4B.
oh, the penny update. I apologize, Mr. Nguyen. I'm trying to get out here too soon.
Madam Chair? Thank you, sir. As far as the transportation penny update, we're categorizing things, and I know, Madam Chair Mackey, you asked if we had this somewhere in writing, and now it's before you, and we also have it in a special place on the website known as the County Dispatch.
It's on the newsletter.
On the newsletter.
It comes out monthly.
Okay. And I found a special place called the Dispatch where you can see this. And I want to thank Communications for what they're doing with keeping the county website and the Penny website up to date with these newsletters and news briefings on projects and what's going on with the pennies. So it's been very impressive. This is just broken into projects and design and then right-of-way acquisition. Last time I didn't go through every project and design, and I don't, want to take your time to do that. The projects that have moved from design to right-of-way acquisition, Pineview Road widening, where we've got all the property owners contacted and, working on right-of-way appraisals, and negotiations are underway on that widening project. Broad River Road widening, where same category of 50 property owners have accepted and 20 have been paid to date. We just recently received, and thanks to anyone who helped, City of Columbia Water has approved the easement documents needed for the water main relocation, which is quite extensive along Broad River Road widening project. And then Smith Rocky Branch Greenway, the property owners involved in that greenway have been notified, and appraisals have been conducted for the easements needed for that greenway. We'll be working with legal and an outside counsel on an agreement with the city for the greenways that are in the city that are only partially in the city, such that maintenance for areas that are unincorporated would be by Richland County and by the city for those portions that are in the city, which is can be an ever-changing equation. Projects that have moved from right-of-way and have received authorization to go into construction that are in bidding now include Atlas Road widening. That project is going out as a utility relocation project. The bid closing date is July 2nd, and our ABs are due on July 3rd, so we have time to assess that. We hope for bidders on all our projects. The project is being advertised. I say this time, there was a pre-bid meeting that occurred with contractors attending. We solicited that project out to many utility contractors. Percival Sidewalk is with procurement for release. It likely will be after council returns for the September committee meetings and an early October award. Projects that have moved from bidding to construction include bid package O of the dirt road package, which is Howard Kugler Road, Jackson Street, Nathan Ridge Lane, and Sarah Matthews. I put the district numbers that the projects exist in. The projects are all different stages of grading with utilities such as water main or communication cables getting out of the way, new drainage systems being installed. None of them are in paving yet. They'll be paved later this summer. Alpine Road resurfacing, all the sidewalk is, concrete sidewalk is 5 foot wide. That is installed for the length that it's going in, and the restoration of that is underway. Resurfacing will begin in July. So that resurfacing is from Percival Road up to Two Notch Road. Blythewood Road widening has a completion of July of 2025. We had calls on that as to why it looked like it stopped for about 3 weeks, but that was because fiber optics were being spliced on the north side of the road. And that's, each cable has some 280 fibers that need to be put in and under little disturbance. So the contractor took some time out there to allow that to happen and is remobilizing to the site now. Sunset Drive sidewalk. The sidewalk is going in on the kind of the north and east side of the roadway. That the clearing is underway. The road is closed for that clearing. The corridor is so narrow you couldn't be doing that kind of clearing under traffic, so that's closed for the next few months. The next step will be shoring on that slope for the north and east side so that water main construction can begin. And for those that don't know, there's areas that have a steep slope where the sidewalk's going in, that'll have a 42-inch concrete wall going in that has kind of like the picture frame forms going in, so it'll look nice along the back side of the sidewalk. And that's for completion this spring, late winter, spring of '25. Projects recently completed, Screaming Eagle Percival intersection, Garner's Ferry Harmon intersection, and then the Bull and Elmwood intersection. That's my report.
Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Livingston. I had questions around, what is this, 1D, Clemson Road and Sparkleberry. So it shows we submitted boring plans back in August of 2023, and we're still awaiting review. Is that reviewed by DOT, or who are we waiting?
Yes. So the first area of the projects in design, when you see red notes about looking for ATP or looking for right-of-way ATP, these are notes that we put on there with our coordination meetings with DOT. I left them on for you to see so that you could see where we're waiting certain things from outside agencies. But these are, yes, that is a long wait there too, as far as the boring plans.
So for Clemson Road and Sparkleberry, there is no note that says looking for ATP. That's what I wanted, I guess that's what I wanted to
Right.
clarify on that one.
They have to have an ATP for Sparkleberry where we do need right-of-way, so that should be there.
My question would be, what is it that can be done to help along review? Since this was August of 23, we are approaching 1 year with DOT.
To get these projects in, and the ones that are in red were put that way because DOT is, they're short-staffed as far as who can get things done. And for instance, our direct contact with our project managers has been moved, has been promoted and is going to a different area of the state. So currently we're working with their program manager, and then he's awaiting somebody to come in and fill in for that position.
Sorry, not to direct only, I appreciate, I just want to make sure I'm clear. This is the only project on this sheet that has the date of 2023. So everything else that says looking for ATP, it was submitted in 24. And so over a year ago, they had staffing problems then, and they got to some of the other stuff, but they hadn't got to
Yeah.
this one.
I'll get you an update on this one.
Does that make sense? Okay, I'm struggling to understand how the other ones have notes and they were submitted after this
Yes,
one.
ma'am. Even
Okay.
since then, we've had the neighborhood public information
Yeah.
meeting in 2024 this
Yeah.
winter. So there's some things to update on this one.
On the 2012 referendum, how many projects we have not made it to the design phase yet? Do we have any projects that?
As far as projects that we intend, that are just sitting there?
Yeah.
Yes, there's one that's in concept design. It had been further, but the design wouldn't work with current conditions in the Pine View Industrial Park, and that would be the Phase 2 of Shop Road Extension. That's currently being looked at as far as the property requirements there with economic development. We've worked with county planning department to, look at what's the best for the county as far as a transportation corridor. So there is a good layout for that. But we do have the OET selected for design, but he's on hold until we get those property
But
issues.
there are not a lot of them that have not made it to the design.
Not a lot, no. So, and then there's one other, and that is related to the CUB airport. If there was a runway extension project, then relocating the roads around the end of the runway had a $5 million budget.
I was getting that because they don't.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. It says looking for ATP. What is ATP?
Authorization to proceed.
Oh, authorization to proceed. I got to remember that one too. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When we submit plans to DOT, there's two stages we need authorization. 60% plans approximately is authorization to proceed with negotiating right-of-way. And at close to 100% plan review, the authorization to proceed to construction.
Okay. Thank you.
I recognize.
Mr. Maloney, in fact, most of these projects are contingent on the response from an outside agency, whether it be Department, Transportation, or whatever. So we can't move because we're waiting to hear from these other entities that are involved.
Yes, ma'am. In general, there's some of these that have been moved, and then we're waiting for our OET to, get comments. So Crane Creek Greenway, for instance, we received comments just recently from the city of Columbia, so there's adjustments to that need to be made. Gills Creek Greenway, there's things the city needs to do, and there's things the city needs from our staff. So that's just an ongoing process there. I will say something, Treno Makers Newcastle neighborhood, and then CERN 2 Rabbit Run sidewalk. Though both of those have been submitted to a different review process. It's called encroachment process, said to be quicker, to get those reviewed once, and then once the encroachment permit is approved, we can take those, to county bidding. So those two in the last few months have been put into that process. My understanding with Treno Makers that it's approved with the DOT staff that normally reviews encroachment permits, and they're just waiting for somebody from hydraulics to get the word, and then we will have that available to bid out.
That's great, because I've been waiting on it for about 6 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, you think it'll be approved and finished before I leave?
Yes, ma'am. That's been the goal. That's been the goal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If there's no other questions, you have anything else this morning? No? Next item on the agenda is item 5. Chair, entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's move for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly second. Madam Clerk, can you cover up for the motion to adjourn?
McBride? Yes. Livingston?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Walker? Mackey?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Adjourned.